Okay. Okay, Anna, can you tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, what your name, I mean, Anna, hello, but where you're from, and yeah, just so we can get to know a bit more about you.
Yeah, of course. So, yeah, my name is Anna. I live in the UK. I'm in the northeast of England and I work for the NHS in physio out in the community. So, I'm out and about a lot looking after different people and kind of really enjoy that job and that way of working. And then I also work with um, kind of massage therapy clients and work with people in that way as well, which I really enjoy. And yeah, just I love being out in nature and I love cooking and um kind of all the boring normal things of reading, gardening, just settling into middle age quite nicely.
Lovely. Okay, love that. I didn't know those things, actually, so thanks for that. Okay, can you tell us a bit about your life and what it looks like before the program in regards to food and body and how you would describe your relationship with food and your body?
Mm, yeah, so I um really would say that my kind of relationship with food was just obsessive and very much um I would binge and I would secret eat and I didn't realize how much of that I was doing and kind of until we did the program. Um and I had a bit of awareness around it, but I also found that it it was just out of control. It was its own thing and I didn't really have much of a relationship with it. I was very kind of distracted when it came to food and just went through a kind of, a classic binge and restrict cycle of getting so hungry, then I just needed to eat something. And so all of the things that I would reach for were the things that then made me really unhappy about the choices that I was making to eat and the type of food I was eating. Um, and there was a huge amount of criticism, and I didn't realize that was there as well. There was a huge amount of criticism and judgment and kind of low self-worth and feeling like I just didn't have any control over my decisions. I'd go to the supermarket and I'd come out the other side and I'd bought all of these things that I didn't really realize I was going to buy. And it was like it was like somebody else was doing the shopping. And that it's just not a nice feeling, really. And felt quite difficult. And for years and years of trying or thinking I was trying to change that, I made me realize that I just had no idea how to even begin to address it as an issue, really.
And how many years was this a part of your life? And was it always in your life? Did it ebb and flow? What was it like with dieting?
Yeah, I mean, so I went to a girls' school and that was very much focused on how to be the thinnest and the most attractive to other people, basically. There was no emphasis on how you felt or kind of what you wanted for yourself. And I think going from being like a very happy little child and not really thinking about food at all, hitting puberty and getting quite, you know, well, putting weight on as a early preteen and having comments made about that and starting to feel self-conscious about my body and the fact that I'd changed and I'd grown loads compared to everybody else in the family. So I was really tall and I was big compared to all of the other women in the family. So all of a sudden that felt a bit different. So then I was like, well, how do I make myself smaller? And then going through schooling and just, growing up in the 90s, the diet culture was rife of Kate Moss and, nothing, that awful quote of nothing tastes as good as thin feels. Like, I lived by all of that and into my 20s. And then just, you're kind of running off caffeine and you smoked at the time. And so all of these things were great because you just kind of feel invincible when you're that age. And I was thin and I was super thin. And that was the thing that made the difference because I was like, well, that's great. But actually, I was horribly depressed and really still very obsessive and still was binging. And you just feel like you can get away with it when you're 20. And actually, it was really quite damaging when I look back at my energy levels and kind of my, again, my relationship with myself being thin meant nothing in comparison to feeling happy now in my body. And just there was always judgment. Arms weren't thin enough, your legs didn't look right. There was never anything that was positive, but that was the messaging, not just from myself, but that was the messaging from everybody. And that was the messaging everybody was having about themselves. And I didn't realize how many discussions kind of went around this process of just being tiny, and that was the thing that was the most important thing. There was never discussions around kind of being healthy or feeling good or enjoying food. It was always very critical. And that, I think, has been a massive, massive shift of learning what it actually looks like to enjoy food. And it's not from a place of desperation and lack.
Yeah, absolutely. I turn my microphone off just so I don't interrupt you with any background noise. That's why that's going over there. Okay. So that's like really insightful for your background story. And so fast forward kind of a few years, like a decade or so, why do you feel like you weren't able to solve this problem yet or by yourself?
I think, like, yeah, so not being able to solve it by myself is very much kind of when I was in my late 20s, I got really poorly with endometriosis, and various different treatments and things that I had from that saw me put on a lot of weight. And I'd never struggled with my weight before, even though when I look at it, it was a very disordered way of managing it. But I'd always been consistently the same size, really. And then, yeah, so I put on about 6 stone, which was a dramatic change for me. And I completely lost all sight of any, I lost complete control basically over what I was eating, how I was feeling, what my body was, who I was, like all of that just got lost. And so I started doing things like Slimming World and Weight Watchers and trying the behaviors that I'd had in the past, but those didn't work anymore. But also, I wasn't in the right headspace to engage with those now. Um, and then I went through a period of time of being on a very restrictive, it was called the endo diet, but it was basically just a massive restrictive diet where you cut out everything. And you were just left with quite like a sad relationship with food that I think then depressed me even more. And so I managed that for a little while, and then I just completely rebelled and then put on more weight because I started eating again because I was so hungry. And it just kind of spiraled in a way that made me realize that I didn't have the toolkit anymore to be able to manage what my weight was like, but also just that relationship with food. And then as I kind of went through therapy and some coaching, I really realized kind of about 4 or 5 years ago that my way of eating was ultimately self-neglect and a lack of connection to myself because I didn't understand how to nourish myself. But I feel like I'd got into such a disordered way of thinking and being that I had no path back out. And all the paths that were there were based around your weight and were based around your fitness, and not having the energy to be able to do those things as well then just made me feel even worse. So I think it was a real kind of like perfect storm of lots of different things coming together. And also lack of education. Like I just, all the things I thought I knew about food, again, were massively disordered, kind of influencer rules around food. And for people who are training 7, 8 times a week for hours on end, which, is not me. So it just became really difficult to look at how to step back, get some perspective, and actually have the right support in place. And it's not something that I could have done by myself, I don't think. Um, because I've been trying for such a long time. And it's sometimes you really just need somebody else to step in and help you get clarity and start to be able to kind of reframe all of those stories that you've got in your brain.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So coming into the program, why did you choose this program? It's all about intuitive eating and food freedom. How did you know it was the right option?
I think knowing that doing this was the right option was partly the timing of it, it kind of popped up when I was really starting to think about going back into Weight Watchers and Slimming World and doing all those things again and just go, oh, you're just going to have to really like restrict properly, um, which I also knew wasn't going to work. So it was kind of perfect timing. I'd signed up to your newsletter kind of a little time before we started working together. And I think the language, that idea around food freedom and intuitive eating, even though I didn't really understand what it was the right kind of language to start putting me in and make me think, oh, is there a different way of having this relationship? And I think I'd come to the understanding that, yes, this was my relationship with food, but it was also my relationship with myself. And that very much shines through in how you talk about the work that you do. And it's a much bigger picture than just your relationship with food. So that was the kind of the big pull for me in terms of knowing that food is a part of what is going on for me, but it's addressing a lot of that underlying relationship with myself and being able to care for myself that really made me think that this was something different. And just doing the same thing again and again really hadn't worked for me and was probably making things worse. So it was trying something that was radically different that I kind of had to have a bit of a leap of faith with. Um, but ultimately was such a lush decision and has been really transformative.
I love the word lush. I've never had my program described as lush, which is great. Okay, well, talk to me about your experience in the program. What surprised you? What were some of your biggest breakthroughs or takeaways? Just your overall experience of going down the path of food freedom. What was it like?
Mm. So kind of, yeah, like reflecting on the program, it was, it really surprised me in how much depth there was in terms of like reflecting on my relationship with food, but also reflecting on those inner narratives and looking at how I think about myself, how I think about my body, how I think about food, um, kind of really deep diving into all of those different areas and then starting to address them. And I think one of the biggest realizations, which was a really early on one, and I know we talked about this a lot, is the asking, like, what are you asking your food to do for you? When you're eating, what is it that you're asking kind of like the solitary apple to do? And that has completely stayed with me. And that stays with me while I go shopping. It stays with me when I am eating what I would call kind of more like the easy, comforting foods. Like, what am I actually asking them to do for me? Because often it's not just about hunger, even though I really recognize that now, and I hadn't recognized what hunger was in the past. It was almost like that was irrelevant. Whereas now I really understand what eating for hunger is, and I also really understand what eating for kind of happiness or emotions and what that looks like, and how to do that in a way that is actually very caring and also making feels like I am in control of it. So I'm not an emotional eater, which is how I would have described myself before, in terms of like if I want to celebrate something, yeah, I want to make a nice cake. So, and I really think about what it is that I am asking that cake to do. And at one time it would have been to like really fill an emotional gap. And now it is to bring some joy and to pour love into making it and enjoy having it and not feel like it's an awful choice. Like that shift of going from food is good or bad to food is a neutral kind of, it's not a commodity, but like a resource to kind of nourish us is a really lovely kind of shift in my brain of being able to actually enjoy feeding other people, enjoy feeding myself, and actually like embrace that as a nice thing rather than something that we're going to do because it feels like it's going to be a nice thing, but then it comes with a ton of criticism and judgment. That bit has gone, that voice has gone. And that is just wildly different because now there is so much brain space just to not have to worry all of the time about what you're doing with food, which is something, and the like, a big realization was when you talked about the fact that we can't not eat. We have to eat at least 3 times a day, plus the snacks. And if you're not eating, then your body's going to start going, why are you not eating? Because I am using energy and I need to move and I need to do all these things. So you've got to be fueled in the right way. So that those perspective changes were massive. And those are the things that come up for me in my everyday when I am eating or I'm thinking about shopping or I'm going to go out for dinner. Um, and I kind of always just ask myself, what am I asking my food to do for me? And often now it's a much more positive slant and feels really nice to eat. I'm not scared of eating anymore. Whereas I think there was a ton of fear. I didn't want to eat. So yeah, that reframe in my brain has been huge.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so funny. What is this apple doing for me? Yeah.
Yeah, I
Apples are
think I think I would. The apple used to have a lot of responsibility.
great. Exactly.
Now it has friends,
Yeah.
and
Good.
yeah. So it's much better.
Yeah. That poor apple. Yeah. Had to last all day.
Yeah,
In life.
it's absolutely crackers.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you mentioned a few things there, and I know this is kind of going a bit off script here, but we spoke about the different elements in the program, and it's almost like that identity shift has taken place.
Yeah,
Example, you would like before you were an emotional eater, and now you are an intuitive eater, a balanced eater,
yeah,
and you've
yeah,
taken on that identity. And there have been
yeah.
different modalities that we've used to shift that identity and that perspective. Stuff like
Oh,
body image
absolutely.
work, nervous system, nutrition science. Can you give me a bit of a rundown of the program? Because I know a lot of people are kind of unaware as to like what goes into a journey like this. What was your experience of like moving through different elements of the program, and is anything that stands out to you?
Can I get up the course list before I talk about this? Because my brain is dreadful for not
Get up the course list.
remembering.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we can yeah get the course list.
yeah.
No,
Just
fair enough.
because
I went
it's
off
all
script.
in there. I've come out the other side of it, but it's
Yeah.
that thing of being able to go, what are all of the different steps that we have taken to get there?
All I know is apples are good, but how do we get there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's just because the stuff that we did at the beginning that was the real foundation. I'm like, that feels like a lifetime ago now.
Actually,
It's in there. It's just happened.
yeah. Actually, that's given me a reflection as well as you were just looking at that. Could you talk about not like the actual content rather, but more any benefits of specific content pieces like the body image, self-compassion, nervous system, nutrition science, um, what's in my program? Belief system, values, food addiction,
Mm,
emotional eating,
yeah,
all of those things. Any benefits that stand out to you?
all of them, Cassie.
Great. The floor is yours.
Ask me the question again, just because, yeah.
Yes. Okay. Um, what is the question? The question is, what are some of your personal benefits from learning about these different modalities? So things like the nervous system, self-compassion, body image, nutrition science through the lens of your healing journey. How,
Yeah.
like, having all of these modalities creates this puzzle in a way,
Yeah.
every piece of the puzzle. Are there any specific benefits to having the nervous system work in there, having the body image work in there, the belief system work, the identity work?
Mm, yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. So kind of looking at the way the program is paced and that kind of journey that it takes you on, um, was really like surprising for what I was expecting. I didn't really know what to expect. So working through these different elements of kind of looking at kind of the identity that we have around food, that was fascinating, because I didn't really realize I had an identity around food. So a lot of the work was very self-reflective and getting to examine what those existing narratives were. Um, the biggest kind of aha moment for me was when we did the work around the nervous system and looking at the impact of basically not eating, or having a very stressful relationship with food was creating this dysregulation within your nervous system. And I hadn't even clocked that that would be happening, even though now it makes so much sense. And that is something that I kind of always think about when I'm eating as well, in terms of how do you cultivate that nice regulated state. And without doing that piece of work, you don't really realize that yes, your emotions and your responses to external things are kind of kicking you in and out of different states of your nervous system, but your food is doing the same. So if you are massively restricting, then you're putting your body into a huge stress response. And even though I recognized that my body was in a stress response for a really long time in my life, I didn't realize that food was such a big part of that. And seeing the impact of having food kind of brought into balance and seeing the impact of then my nervous system being an awful lot calmer and my energy being more balanced and having like better sleep and just feeling a lot calmer generally, um, has been huge. So that piece around the nervous system was phenomenal, um, and really, really unexpected for me. I wasn't expecting to see that in the program. And that, yeah, was huge because I think that was one of the most important parts that we kind of went through. Um, and then also when I think about the kind of the body image stuff, um, because that came into it as well, and that kind of criticism that we have over our body and what our body looks like or how it works, to be able to sit and reflect on how the body, how we can be more neutral about the body in the same way that we are going to be more neutral about food. We're trying to like bring that, all those thoughts and relationship back into a nice balanced state, was really interesting because I didn't realize how much time I spent kind of just like checking myself in, reflections in shop windows and things, or when I go past a mirror, like there was loads of judgment and there was constant, oh, that doesn't look too good today, or I'm not sure about that. And it was always very negative. Whereas having that piece of work to really reflect on it and ask yourself to look at what those thoughts are before you've even realized you've had them was really good because it kind of highlighted to me again. I thought I was quite body image positive, and I think I am with other people, but I hadn't realized that for myself, there was still like huge amounts of judgment on, but you should be smaller. And actually, now I'm very much like, but look how much your body is doing for you. Look at how you feel in your body. And I'm happier now than I ever was when I was, teeny tiny. And that is such a relief. Again, it is this like pressure is taken off. So all of these all of the elements of the course that you kind of go through where you're reflecting on that inner narrative, it's like they just release this expectation and this pressure of what you've told you should be, and you get to just be who you are. And that is a dramatic thing to be able to do for somebody and to guide them through. Because again, I never thought, or I thought I was doing quite well. And then it's not until you have another way of looking at things that you realize, oh, actually, there is still work to be done. And this is such a huge thing because yeah, you do have to eat, you do have to eat. And I would have always said, oh, I'm addicted to sugar. So looking at the work that you did around talking around addiction, and having the reframe on that was really interesting in terms of it's just another set of diet culture rules that have been placed on us. And actually, it's just redressing the balance of your relationship with food. It's not necessarily to do with addiction. So that was really interesting as well. So yeah, there's it's a real emotional journey, and it's a real difficult emotional journey,
Yeah.
but the benefits of it are massive. So it's worth every reflection
Yeah.
and kind of new learning, really. Yeah.
Absolutely. It definitely has been like a big part of life for a few months as you're working on
Mm.
yourself, healing this part of your life. And I mean, we do have the million-dollar question. Do you feel like a sugar addict anymore?
No, I don't. It's really funny, but I don't because I'm eating now, my body isn't just craving instant energy.
Mm,
So I'm not just going, oh God, I need a can of Coke or I need like all of the chocolate biscuits. I'm like, oh, I really fancy a can of Coke or really fancy some biscuits. And then I have them and I'm like, oh, that's great. But I'm not getting the same crazy out of like wax spikes in my body because that's not all I'm having. I'm eating a really nice range of delicious food now. And I just wasn't letting myself do that before. Everything just came with such a high fear factor. And now it comes with a real, like, interesting, oh, this is exciting. What am I going to eat?
mm,
So,
mhm.
yeah, it is a dramatic change.
It's so nice. I had to clarify. We had to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about your results. I know you've definitely shared like a lot of your results. Is there anything you'd like to add in regards to how you feel now, what you say to yourself, and not just food, but how other elements of your life has changed? Has there been an
Yeah.
effect?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the most interesting knock-on effects is, which was very unexpected, was like financially. I don't waste money on like kind of really high, basically high cost, low nutrition food. So I don't buy takeaways all the time and I'm not buying pizza all the time, like because I'm enjoying making homemade pizza or I'm taking the time to think about what meals I'm putting together. And the ingredients that go into those are generally fairly low cost because of what they are. So a lot more fruit and veg, and I didn't realize how little fruit and veg I was eating. So kind of getting those in, but I get really excited now about the kind of like shopping for the color of the rainbow and adding in new foods and experimenting. I'd stopped experimenting for such a long time, and I'd hadn't realized that I'd stopped experimenting and enjoying cooking. So that's definitely been a big shift. But I think overall it's that level of peace, it's that level of calm. There's no anxiety around food now. And there was a ton of anxiety around food before. There was like this constant nervous energy around food and what I was going to eat. And there was a real feeling of lack. And if you don't eat it now, then it's not going to exist tomorrow, even though it will exist tomorrow. And then I'll do the same thing again tomorrow. It was very, um, there was so much urgency all of the time around eating things and hiding what I was eating. Whereas now it is this like very calm, things can sit in the cupboard, things are always going to be there if I want them. There is no kind of urgency in the same way now. And it just feels very peaceful. And that is something that I never thought was going to shift. Um, and just being able to, I suppose, yeah, just go out and enjoy having a meal out. I used to hate going for meals out because I was like, oof, this is, one, it's going to be expensive. Two, it's going to be like a difficult choice of I'm just going to go crazy or I'm not going to be able to actually pick something that I want because I would just be picking something that like felt like a recreation of binge eating at home, but you're doing it outside. And actually that calmness comes and I'm more interested in going out again. and enjoying going out and choosing new things, whereas before I would just pick the same thing as like kind of a comfort and ease. So that, yeah, that is a big dramatic shift, which is lovely.
That's awesome. This is some, so there's this little
There's a fly.
guy, he's just like going, can you see it? Just, he's tiny and he's going around my head and I'm like, it's like flying around. Go away. I was trying to stay calm and you know what it's like when you got that fly. Oh goodness. Okay. Um, I mean, that's all awesome. I love the money saving, which was like a added benefit of all of this. That's awesome.
Yeah,
So going
yeah.
out and like that's what going out is meant to be about, isn't it? It's meant to be about enjoying food and like trying different cuisines and things that you don't cook at home
Mm,
and trying different restaurants and being a bit explorative. Yeah, it's awesome.
mm, yeah.
Exciting. So, what do you think someone would need to hear in order to take that leap? And so the question is actually, what did your past self need to hear in
Yeah.
order to give her that a-okay to start intuitive eating and pursue this journey?
I'm just looking quickly because I wrote down quite a lot around this.
Mm.
Um, yeah, okay.
Right, so I've killed the fly in that time, which is great. Okay. I know you don't eat, don't you're a vegetarian over there, so I shouldn't tell you.
Oh no. Oh no, I just live in a house with a vegetarian. I'm not vegetarian. I will eat the fly.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so say again, so is the question, what would somebody need to hear?
Yeah, because it is
Yeah,
it's full of so many unknowns and it's a paradigm shift and it goes against everything that we've been
yeah.
taught. And it's quite a buzzword as well. Intuitive eating is becoming more popular
Mm,
online and it's getting misrepresented. And people are just confused by what is it? But I can't trust my body. You want me to listen to my body, but if I do that, I'll eat 3 tubs of ice cream. Like what? And
yeah.
so that's the mindset they have coming into a program like this. It's
Mm,
often they're at that what we describe as like kind of a rock bottom, like a dieting rock bottom. They're in that place
yeah,
of, I think you said this to me, where you're at this place where you came into this, and I believe you said this, correct me if I'm wrong. I just can't do one more diet, but I don't know
yeah.
what to do. Like I don't want to go on Weight Watchers or Slimming World. I don't want to count my calories. I
No.
don't want to like restricts my food. Like I've done that. It doesn't work. I'm miserable. But what else do I do? And that's where all my clients honestly start from.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Yeah. Um, so I think like being totally honest, I was really skeptical when I signed up. Even though I was also really interested, and I was definitely um like at a loss of how to address the problem and knew I needed to do something that's kind of quite radically different. Um, but the big difference between doing all the things that I tried before was that this wasn't led by body image transformation or weight loss. And so I was really curious as to what that looks like in terms of it's such a different emphasis on how to redress your relationship with food um, when the emphasis isn't on weight loss. Um, and so, yeah, I knew there was a deeper problem kind of around caring for myself and looking after myself and nourishing myself um, and looking at the fact that I couldn't hear what it needed and I couldn't see what needed to be done to change that relationship. And because a lot of it is about the reparenting and being able to step into that adult role of looking after kind of what it is that we need. Ultimately, eating is around like caring for ourselves. So it was being able to step out of being young and not knowing kind of what to do and have stepping into that adult role and being able to actually take charge and make good decisions. In the same way that you would with a kid. It was like that was that I find that's quite an interesting way of looking at it. You kind of you're feeding your child. So you're feeding your child self. Um, but I think also, there was a lot of resistance around letting go of those old behaviors. Those old behaviors had really served a purpose, and had become such an inbuilt part of my identity. The thought of those going and being left with this new space for something different to step in, I was like, well, I don't know what's going to step in. Um, and even though I trusted that it was going to be something good, I also didn't necessarily believe that it could happen. So then I was like, well, then you're just going to be left with even less. So there's a real like scarcity mindset going on, not only in the way that I was eating already, but in the idea of it changing. Um, and kind of what is comforting, whether it's good or bad for you, or is having a negative impact or you don't like it. Like, that's really powerful and quite strong. And I think that was one of the biggest things of the program. It was such a gentle unraveling of old mindset or behaviors, and it was cared for in such a way that actually, as one thing kind of was let go, this lovely, supportive other side was brought in. So there was no lack, there was no scarcity. It was like this lovely, gentle shift. And I think because of the way it's paced and the way you kind of go through exercises, it allows for that kind of transition to happen rather than it be, well, you've got to let go of one thing, then there's this big gap, and then the other thing can come in. It's like you are shuffling out those old behaviors very gently because this bigger, more kind of caring, curious side of yourself is coming in, and that takes over because that is a much more joyful place to be. Um, so yeah, the kind of learning to reparent, learning to be curious, and ultimately kind of the education, like learning what actually is nutrition, and um, being able to have tools that helps you break down this identity that has, been with me forever to create a new one. That was, one of the most important things, and I never would have known that that was possible unless I'd gone through the program. um but also kind of hearing that is quite interesting now, listening to myself saying it, because I didn't think that that's how it would look. So yeah, it is a big but gentle transformation process, and ultimately I eat more now than I've ever eaten. I've put on no weight whatsoever, which I know is not the emphasis, but that was a real shock. That those fears around changing my eating habits meant that I was just going to, like, balloon in my weight, or then my body's going to look totally different again. My body hasn't changed. My body is the same. There's something quite solid and calming knowing that ultimately you can change all these behaviors, you can feel so much better without having to have some big restrictive, transformation physically. I'm just really happy and solid and content in my body now in a way that I wasn't before. And I'm really happy and solid and content in the way I eat now. And that feels like everything has kind of matched up now. All of the things that felt completely out of whack now match up and are balanced and solid and come from a lovely place of just kind of care and happiness. So yeah.
That was so nice.
Mm,
So nice. I've never heard it described as like a gentle unraveling and then this like lovely kind of insertion of another part of you.
mm,
It's beautiful.
yeah.
Yeah. You
No,
speak,
that is, yeah.
yeah, you do speak very well. You explain things in a really nice way. I'm not sure if you've ever been told that before, but you do.
Oh, good. I always just worry that I just waffle on too
No,
much.
you're not. You're not waffling at all. You're not waffling. Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Do you feel like that's answered the question of like what would stop someone from coming into intuitive eating? Because like honestly, Anna, I want every woman, like every woman needs to do this.
Mm.
In my
Well,
humble
I think
opinion.
every man needs to do it as well. The more I watch men, they're even worse.
Yes,
They
okay,
just
fine.
don't realize there's a problem.
Yeah.
You're like, oh God, like women are all sat going, I know there's a problem, but I don't know what to do. So I'll just keep doing the same shit I've been doing previously. Whereas now, men, you watch men do it and you just think, okay, you're all working out and being crazy. Not just Sean, but like loads of different men are just like, they're on fasting diets and they are working out loads. And then they're like, I'm just so hungry. And I'm like, of course you're hungry. Just eat something. But yeah, bless them. It is, yeah, it is very interesting to watch. But
Mm,
no, I think,
mm.
has that answered the question? Hmm, I'm
I think
trying to think.
it's beautiful. It's more what would you like if you were talking like if I was this apprehensive, skeptical person over here,
Yeah,
what do you think I would need to hear?
it's a hard one because I think when you're super skeptical, everybody hits their own limit of what is and isn't tolerable. And some people can do a lifetime of stuff that should be really not tolerable, but that is their existence and that is what they've chosen to do. Um, and so I think in that respect, you're never going to be able to convince everybody that this is going to work for them
True.
because you could have loads of people sat here going, this has been amazing and this has been my experience. But if they haven't hit that point where they're like, something's got to change,
True.
then they're not going to. And I only say that from watching patients go through a different
Yeah.
version of this, but they know something needs to change. They kind of want they want the end, but they don't want to do the work.
Mm.
You will always find that there's going to be people that want to do the work and people that don't. And
Mm.
it's convincing the ones that do that this is the right work, I guess.
Yes, for sure.
Um,
For sure. Okay, well, I guess you actually have answered the question then. In if that's a very good point. Yeah, we're not in the business of convincing, trust me. No, thank you. We
no,
don't want to work with those
it's yeah.
clients.
No. Well, it's just then you just kind of exhaust yourself trying to convince people
Yeah,
that this is a good idea. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make them drink,
Hmm.
which is very frustrating because you just think if you just engage, it'll be fine. But it's all these other elements that
Yeah.
will feed into why they can't engage.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
For sure. Okay, well then I think you've answered the question then, because that's a fair challenge. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I mean, any closing statements or final words?
Everybody should sign up for it. Honestly, I think just, it has I
Mhm.
am very surprised. Like, as somebody that has done a lot of kind of self-development work before I came to this and has gone through therapy and, will go back and do those things again now because ultimately all of like doing this has just made me realize that this is just one part of the puzzle and there are so many different pieces and they all will feed into each other on different levels again and again. And ultimately, though, having a strong foundation in my relationship with food has felt like the piece that has been missing for such the longest time because it is something you do every day and it is something that has to keep happening. And for that to be so disordered and so uncomfortable, it just takes up too much of your life. So to go through and actually heal that in a way that feels like I've got a really strong foundation now of what it looks like to eat well from all these different angles, with the emphasis being on neutrality, listening to your body, being led by hunger cues, um, and not feel like I'm out of control with it is just dramatic and not something that I thought could change. But it can, in the same way that I thought I was never going to be able to have a kind inner voice. And I
Mhm.
went through coaching, and all of a sudden I had this kind inner voice that is curious and lets me explore this kind of thing that feels really difficult. And that is lovely to be able to also go through it with you because you are so kind and caring and invested in me getting results, which then feels like you've got, your own personal cheerleader and somebody that knows their stuff inside and out, so can challenge when you're feeling stuck, but also is super supportive and you never feel judged. And that's massive with food. Food and body image, like, we judge ourselves so much anyway that you want the person that's helping you to just be there as a lovely mirror to reflect back and just help you reframe when you get stuck in your own head. So that's, I'm so glad that it's you that I've done this with.
That's so sweet. Oh, thanks. Oh, Anna, that's so nice. I always feel like these testimonials are always sticking for compliments. So thank you. I
If I didn't believe it, I wouldn't say it.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Thank you. I received that. It's been a joy, and that was so nice to listen to your story. Oh wow. I'm gonna go back and listen. I'm gonna go back and listen to this, and obviously chop it and edit it, and
Mm,
chop bits out and put things in, and just don't think people can watch it for an hour. I feel like I might lose their
no,
attention.
yeah. Oh God, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, that was so nice. Let me stop the recording. Um, Perfect. Wow, that went so fast. I want to also ask you.